Anji. So, namaste everybody, and I'm very happy to introduce my friend Rajaram, who is will give a talk today. Rajaram is a former parent of the Valley School, and he has also been associated with the Krishnamurti Study Center at Bangalore for many years, and is involved in the translation into Kannada of Krishnamurti's works. A few months ago, when my book 1+1 Infinity or Eternity was ready, I had requested him to also review the book. And that is when actually I came to know his full name. His name is Dr. Rajaram Kudli. Until then, I didn't know that those details. He doesn't talk about it. He has a PhD from IIT Kharagpur in computational science, and he has specialized in the area of research and development and learning and development. So one is in technology, the other is in human resources. There is also another side to his name. Kudli is a village at the confluence of the Tunga and the Bhadra rivers. In the 15th or 16th century, the Sringeri Jagadguru went on a pilgrimage to Kashi. And in those days, they went walking. It took years. And after many years, he didn't return. So the Mutt appointed his junior as the pontiff. After that, the senior pontiff returned. Now, he could not go back to the Mutt. So he came to this village Kudli and he set up a Mutt, which even today is called Kudli Sringeri Mutt. So this is the background of Dr. Rajaram. He has an enormous number of stories. So we are actually going to listen to a lot of his stories. The stories, let me assure you, are very gripping. They have a message of their own and they have a connection to Krishnamurti's message. So let us listen to Dr. Rajaram and his stories. Yes, Rajaram, floor is yours.
Thank you, Gopalanji. I am going to speak in English. So I hear very beautiful, very sweet Hindi. I wish in Hindi, though I understand pretty much everything said in Hindi, I am not fluent in speaking. Completely understand everything said in Hindi. We can have conversation partially in Hindi and English also. So thanks Gopalan for the nice introduction. A little bit, I didn't know that Gopalan had found out so much of history of Kudli. So that's a surprise for me. And a little more history to that is actually Adi Shankara, when he came down to south to set up this and Shankara was walking further. Then when he realized that Sharada Devi had actually stood, she stopped walking behind him. He looked back and then she said, "I want to stay here." So, but he requested her that we have some more work to do, some more walk to do. Then whereas he consecrated a standing statue of Sharada there at that there, and of course a Shivalingam and so on. So you have a standing Sharada Devi, consecrated at Kudli. Finally, she reaches Sringeri along with Shankara, and she sits down there, settles down. So the statue you have of Sharada Devi at Sringeri is a sitting posture. So that's a little more of history to complete whatever I know of history of that place. Anyway, we have been living through these times. I don't know whether we are blessed or cursed to have lived through so many changes happening in our lifetime. Finally, ending with this pandemic, which has accelerated all possible consequences of our science and technology-driven education and the way of living. I have been talking about a lot of this, my exploration and experience and perspective in our Valley School, in our regular meetings and as a volunteer when I've been working with study center folks. we used to have a lot of discussions, particularly Krishnaji was there during last 2-3 years of his life. He used to have a lot of discussions. I heard his perspectives also, which was very helpful for me and so on. So when I was talking to Gopal and Sushma ji had been suggesting to me, why don't you write? Because later on at the end of this, I will share some of query as well as it is unspeakable. There is no precise cause and effect I can point out. Just participating in that environment and working with Krishnamurti teachings for translation, etc., did start revealing something of its own, which translated into something like a Krishnamurti school for adult children, the graduates and school dropouts, etc., which revealed a lot more than what I had acquired through experience and industry, which I'll share in the later part of this talk. That is something Sushma ji and others have been saying that I should write, but I never had an opportunity. Probably today, I have topic being, how technology has affected our living. It's nothing new when we look back, though I'm in my mid 50s. So when we were children and we started going to school, there was not so much of technology, just of technology, and then came, petrol driven two-wheelers and so on, which all looked like just natural progression. We were living in a city. These things became on. But all along with that even small city living, we also started seeing various kind of ailments, which we as children we didn't understand what is it about, but things were talked about, and then there were treatments and so on. So I will start with some examples in the healthcare, particularly as I have personally seen and participated and experienced with my very, very close family members. I would not name them, like my parents and my family, close family and my close friends and so on. Every one of them had some curious twist to the possibility. Otherwise, other than this, the solutions for our simple healthcare problems given by the science-driven research and healthcare system. And of course, this is we can see this in every walk of life, but health being something which we experience every day. I would start with that. My father was diabetic. Then he used to, towards after he was 50, it was discovered. The whole family was diabetic, but he was very particular about, diet and so on. He had worked with many, living and dead gurus. He had constructed ashrams. He was more of a public service person. A lot of charitable work, etc. Very religious also, completely traditional. As a householder, to the best of extent, the way the ancient wisdom or what we call the Sanatan Dharma could be practiced, he was a practitioner of that, facilitating, people who had left the mainstream, who were either yogis or gurus or and so on, and then people who were in the karma marg and jnana marg, he would facilitate all of that. Our household was full of that kind of environment. We grew up in that environment. But somewhere along the line, since as children we were not getting the attention a child requires, there was a healthcare. He had developed diabetes apart from few other ailments, and he was a regular to going to getting his blood tested in a laboratory, which would cost at that time probably 50 rupees. Once in a month or so he would go. But he was only 10th standard passed. Through his personal experience and diligence and discipline and observation, he had probably discovered areas to education that is helpful for making not only his own living, to help everybody in various walks of life. He discovered how to do the best agricultural practices. He became agriculturist. He was a businessman. He actually started as a cleaner and driver and so on. His help just Profit was never a motive. So he never made money level as the money is respected. So coming to this one, earning, I found this glucometer, very commonly available. At that time, probably it costed somewhere around 7,000-8,000 rupees, the early ones. I bought one and gifted to him so that it would be easier for him. Anybody at home would be helpful in measuring it more often. Generation, why waste money on this thing? It only costs 50 rupees. I'll just go on cycle or his moped. He'll get it tested once in a month. What is the point of spending 7,000-8,000 rupees? And so on. I said, no, okay, it would be convenient. Why don't you try? When he started trying it on himself, he liked it. He rather fell in love with that. He started using it more often. Then this is what happened. After 2-3 months of usage, he found it, obviously it is convenient. He can see the readings himself. And then he started adjusting his, medication or insulin. But then he started observing something. He started experiencing something. He started writing down the readings. Then what he started doing was he started going to the lab. He would take that, the fast blood reading from the glucometer, write it down early morning, and immediately he would go to the lab and get and give the blood sample, collect the report, and write that down also. He started doing it at a higher frequency of a couple of days a week, and wrote down those readings from glucometer and from the laboratory for a few weeks. And when I went home next time, he showed me, look at this, there is something wrong with this. What was wrong? This glucometer reading was always showing 10 points higher than the laboratory readings. Obviously, only one of them could be correct. I had no clue. I was science educated fellow engineer, having done PhD and working in industry. My, the way I looked at technology is it's a useful thing, and my father would be happy. And when I asked them, with some hesitation, only one of them told, a close family member, that why this happens is glucometer is made easy so that you can prick your own fingertip and then you get the blood sample. But that is taking the blood from artery. Whereas when you go to the laboratory, they take sample from the vein. So artery is where the glucose is higher. It's actually supplying glucose to the cells. Whereas vein is where the blood which is going out would be going. Therefore, glucose level would be lower. This was discovered by my father, who is otherwise, not much educated, but out of his own experience of correcting his own medication based on this reading, he suspected something wrong. That's where I saw that otherwise religious mind, blindly believing in technology, also discovered something wrong with that. And my kind of scientifically educated people got educated, got to know these possibilities. Obviously, this leads to many questions. Why is that it is not told? Why is it that it is not printed on the box, printed in the instruction manual? Why are the doctors not educating patients about it? I didn't have much answers. As I got into this industry, which is more and more driven by data analytics and marketing, I understood. Can you imagine everybody testing themselves with glucometer, which is showing higher reading, starts consuming more insulin? It's good for business. That's what I could conclude. Then he became more careful. He reset his own threshold when he would take more insulin and when he would not take. So he adjusted his practices. He was fine with that. Similarly, the next thing is ECG. Another close family member, up to the age of 80, a lady did not have any heart ailment, and she got exhausted. She was, until then, husband, 10-year-old husband, older husband was alive. She was a dedicated, the traditional lady taking care of the husband until he died. And a year after he died, all her suppressed, degenerative diseases she had accumulated started coming out. The first thing to happen was exhaustion, Her son, who was a doctor, just saw her being exhausted, looking exhausted, got her admitted to hospital. They suspected, the heart condition. She was admitted to ICU. The next morning, early morning, there was a heart attack. So her heartbeat and pulse stopped completely. For about 5 to 7 minutes, she was gone. Fortunately, that was the changeover of duty doctors. A duty doctor came, she was revived. In next 30 minutes, she had two similar incidences, but she was revived. She was in ICU for about 4-5 days. Then they shifted for observation, 24/7 observation of ECG, just to watch if for other likely event. And then she was shifted to another larger town, cardiac specialized, ICU. Another about 10 days there. They were taking these measurements. This incident did not occur. Then she was shifted to a bigger metro, specialized CCU, that's cardiac care unit, in an ICU ambulance, always being, fearful of another, event happening anytime. Nothing happened. For about 20 across the cities, transported in ICU ambulance, absolutely nothing happened. Then I remembered a friend of mine who, as an IT engineer, in his mid-40s, he had acquired all the occupational, health hazards like diabetes and heart condition. He had an angioplasty also. And then when he was diagnosed for diabetes, particularly at the age of 45 or 46 in Bangalore, the doctor told this is a very common condition, occupational hazard for your kind of lifestyle and working habits. So what do I do now? Start taking this medication. Then what happens after? For how long? No, there is no stoppage. It's not like a antibiotic dosage. Then what happens? You have to continue to take this. Then what happens? You will start one day insulin tablets, and then insulin injection. Then what happens? The dosage of insulin increases. Then what happens? Your kidney will be affected. Then dialysis. After that, the frequency of dialysis increases. And finally, it would become once in a week, then every day. And finally, if you can afford, you will start carrying a portable dialysis machine. And then finally, someday you will die. He was not convinced with that, or he was rather, he could not accept that. Then he went to Delhi, his native town, got himself tested again from a completely unknown doctor, probably his family doctor. Same story. You are diagnosed for type 2 diabetes. This is what happens. Exactly the same progression, as if they are all taught, or they have all heard the same, recorded, song. It's exactly the same thing. And how long will I be surviving? First thing he realized is quality of life degenerates, and it is so predictable. And he is going to live anywhere, live before he dies. It would be another 5, 10, or 15 years, with quality of life degenerated and with a lot of money spent on all these things. He just could not accept, though he was a science educated technology fellow. Something deep inside told him that it cannot be like this. And he was told this is a very common disease now. India is probably one of the countries which has the largest incidences of the type 1 and type 2 diabetic. To the extent today India is called as the diabetic capital of the world. This is how it is. And our science and technology is so perfected that we have this treatment. We are actually prolonging your life. You have a certain quality of life. Maybe if you are lucky, you can survive as long as you're supposed to live. You are medically managed is the word for that. But this gentleman took it as a challenge. He started reading all the medical literature, found out what exactly is this diabetes about. Then he started experimenting with himself. He found out the root causes of that, the lifestyle, the food habits, every damn thing. He started experimenting with himself, his lifestyle, when he would go to bed, when he would wake up, and the food habits, he used to, it seems, in the middle of the day, he would lie down naked on his rooftop, turn around 360 degree, and so on. Many experiments later, after about a year or so, he found out the perfect balance of lifestyle and food habits, by which he reversed his diabetic condition 100%. when this ladies, was in 20 days in, this gentleman went on discovering a similar causes which could be reversed for all the common ailments which people suffer from, including heart conditions, the liver, the kidney, and whatever else. When this lady, whom I knew, I was associated with that for all the 20 days of ICU stay, I was with the person, and I knew, and suddenly I remembered this gentleman. I just called. His name happens to be Manoj. Hey, Manoj bhai, here's a old lady. She's going through this. Just one incident happened. This heart event happened 20 days ago. By that time, it was probably 15, 18 days. And they have been keeping her in ICU. They're taking this measurement, but nothing is happening. But they are not letting us go. We are paying every day for ICU. Immediately he told, what is her age? This is the age. What is her lifestyle? This is the lifestyle. The traditional ladies' routine every day. And that she has been doing for 80 years of her life. He told immediately, look, this has nothing to do with the heart. Whatever measurements they do 24/7, every second, they are not going to get this again, unless it happens again by chance. Then what is the reason? He says indigestion. Just ask her, does he pass stool regularly? Has she been passing stool regularly? For how many years she has been suffering from, indigestion related this thing? It turned out that she had difficulty. Nobody in the household knew about it, because the ladies of generation, they would be the first one to get up by 5 o'clock or before that. They would be the last one to go to bed. Nobody has seen them going to, lavatory in the very piously with only sattvic food and sattvic lifestyle. They are also healthy, but nobody had understood this. She had difficulty. And the treatment for that, give enema. The hospital and the doctors would not agree. What do you mean? An old lady, fragile with a lot of these comorbid conditions in ICU? No way. We are not going to give that enema. Fortunately, after another 3-4 days, since they could not get any data they wanted, they let us go. As soon as we came home, I consulted Manoj bhai, and he told me, you have to start doing this. There is a particular thing called, apple cider vinegar, which is natural product. A particular brands are, more trusted than the others. He recommended that 2 or 3 times a day, and some particular another natural product called Epsom salt. So if you are very fragile health, it's not recommended to take orally. It could be taken through the skin. Just dissolve it in hot water and keep your feet in that for a few hours every day. That absorption through the skin is good enough. She started doing these 2 things. Within a couple of weeks, she was perfectly normal. Those heart events never occurred again. Then I would go to another close family member, a very hardworking young lady. When she was going through menopause, it was extremely painful. She was having bleeding for almost 15 days every month. She could not move around. This went on for many months. Then we started consulting the doctors, the usual gynecologists. They started experimenting with various medicine. Then when they were unable to control, it went on to the latest hormonal treatment and so on. And when we tried to consult another specialist in another place, they said, look, it has come to such a stage that there are fibroids starting to happen. Either it would become cancerous, or the uterus has to be removed immediately. The family got scared. Even a doctor booked the OT for the next day, say, come tomorrow morning, early morning, everything will be done in an hour's time. We're not convinced. I was going for a meditation camp, one of those, the usual, there are many who conduct that. I said, I have to go. And this family also wanted to join always. I said, okay, let's also go. And in that meditation camp, a particular, I would say, combination of some 7 different types of pranayam, including mainly Kapalabhati and, this thing was taught, Bhastrika. This lady, because she was going through this pain, and she also came to the camp, but because she was going through this bleeding, she could not. They are advised not to. But she learned that by observing, and her family members had learned. After the camp, she started practicing that every day, because the instructions were such that if you are doing these things regularly, you would not get these kind of, menstruation cramps and migraine and so many other things. Just in case you get it, you practice this very religiously and intensely, you will see the immediate cure. That's what exactly happened. In 3 months' time, about 12 weeks of regular practicing of these pranayams, she was completely out of that zone. She did not require any more medication whatsoever, let alone any surgery. She has been healthy since then. Then I would say, I myself, most people know that Bangalore is a difficult place for people who have, breathing problems. And even healthy people, they'll develop breathing problem if in Bangalore is a legend in Bangalore. When I came to Bangalore in 2002, I was living in Pune for a few years. Till then, I had absolutely no ailment of whatever kind, just naturally, thank God for that. But as soon as I came to Bangalore, I started having this, what do you call, respiratory tract infection, the usual, cold, cough, and infection. I would go to the neighborhood doctor. I would get, a course of antibiotic, 5 days of antibiotic. It would have its effect on the body, another 10 days of weakness and so on. I would recover. And 15 days later, again, it would recur. This went on for 2 years. That's when there's something wrong. I cannot take this as part of life. Taking antibiotic every month is not a done thing. And we went to a very old doctor, that is pre-MBBS, the FRCS kind of a family doctor recommended by a friend. He just dismissed me in 30 seconds. Hey, go man, this has nothing to do with infection. This is basically allergy. In Bangalore, 30 years ago, there used to be only one allergy causing pollen, Parthenium, but today there are 32 varieties. Most people don't know or don't say that. This way, if you keep on taking antibiotic, you will become immune to antibiotic and you will have all kind of problems. He just showed me through the window. Across the road, there is an Ayurvedic doctor. Why don't you go there? Literally, he dismissed me in 30 seconds. That's what I did. Once I went there, there are very basic preparations of that. Once we started keeping in your throat and lungs, you just start taking those basic, which is available from Baidyanath, Kottakkal and everybody. You won't have it again. And of course, a little bit of Chyawanprash and things. I was amazed. I was very proud of my science education, very good in chemistry, biology, though, my fascination was more for physics and technology. These are the basic things. We start believing so much in science, the products of science and the convenience of that, and enormous belief in the certification, with which this authority to administer all these things is given. Maybe there is some good in that. Maybe it is useful, but there are much simpler things with much less, side effects and implications, almost at zero cost. Why is it not even talked about or taught? I was surprised. There are a couple of other things like this, particularly study center. Somewhere around in his 40s or 50s rather, he started having serious problem inside his head, which is enormous, electrical shocks in his brain. It became unbearable for him. It started with some move out of the home because this could happen anytime to him. It was so unbearable. He didn't know what to do. He tried few medicine, did not work for him. Then finally they had to go to this scientist, neurosurgeons, 2 top surgeons in southern India. They told him, this is the last resort. The last resort is you have to go through a brain surgery. A part of brain would be removed. After that, what happens? There is a very likelihood of you getting a stroke, or you might live like a vegetable with a lot of memory loss. We don't know what would be lost because we don't know which part of brain will have to be removed and so on. He was ready to take the risk. The worst case being he will die. He was ready to take that risk because this pain was unbearable, and the fear of that occurring anytime was so unbearable, and it was showing up on his face. Once when I met him, I just remembered this Manoj Bhai and called him. When I described this thing to him, immediately he said, this has nothing to do with brain. It's basically vitamin I asked him, why don't you come down tomorrow and then talk to this gentleman? He came down. He lives on the other side of Bangalore. Came down to South Bangalore, spent almost a day with this gentleman, stayed at his home, understood his complete lifestyle, what is his routine. Then deficiency case, he recommended few variety of vitamin injection to be taken in high dosage for a couple of weeks. That's what exactly this gentleman did. When he called me to after probably 3 weeks, he was completely free of this, and he was traveling with his daughter in Far East in train when I called him. He was so confident of traveling to far away places alone with a child and so on. This is a fact. And then he tried to help many people with, this Manoj Bhai's diagnosis and so on. That's another story. The lessons I started learning, or rather the observation made was, there is something missing in the way the science-driven solutions for a lot of our problems are dispensed or administered. There is a gap in the information. What the distributor tells, and finally what reaches consumer or patient, there is certainly information gap. We do not know. It's basically ignorance. We do not know whether it is deliberate or otherwise. It is reaching dangerous proportion. If this is what can happen to people who are educated, who are particularly educated in science and technology, imagine what may be happening to the common people. This was a point of inquiry. Then I would just like to suggest, there's something missing in this, the way things are happening around us. Coming to agriculture, I mentioned my father became an agriculturist. Like everybody else, though he was a good agriculturist helping others, etc., he also took to the fertilizer driven, which is, was the technology at that time. Fertilizers and pesticides. What happened is, over about 15 years to 20 years of cultivation, the land became infertile. He had to literally replace the topsoil, getting the soil from outside. It degenerates. Initially, it gives more yield. When after finishing my graduation, I was never interested in engineering. I said, he asked me to help in, I was not interested to go for jobs. So since I was sitting at home, he asked me to help in agriculture. That's when I started, understanding that. And at that time, Fukuoka's one-star revolution was a phenomena. And having understood that, and in India, there were people who were more of a literary people who got into experimenting with this natural farming, because traditionally that's what it was. They got success. I was very fascinated by that. I wanted to do agriculture natural way, the natural farming and so on. Father said, no, now this is unsustainable. Agriculture is unsustainable. You cannot even make a living out of that. You guys are educated. That's the reason I educated you. Why don't you go for jobs? So he literally sold the land, actually, because it is unsustainable anymore. Lot of almost every person in our known the extended family who had land had started selling, because it is unsustainable. Unsustainable because of this, the infertility of the land itself. Is there an alternative? Of late, we have been hearing more and more about organic farming. And today, with more awareness of the need for that, and of course, in the background of this is wherever the green revolution happened, thanks to these fertilizers and pesticides, of cancers are also phenomenal. Punjab is a case, and in South India, this there was a particular case between Kerala and Karnataka. Government was involved in that, and so on. So a movement of awareness has started, and and then came in this biotechnology driven. So it's all in the public domain. The alternative of organic farming, natural farming was always available, but as we have been seeing, there is enormous resistance in the system. That I see again as this ignorance driven, science driven, technology driven delivery of food, production and distribution and consumption of food, where we are almost left with no choice. So while exploring this with some youngsters, I'd figured out this is the way to do. We tried to create a business for that, that is distributing organic vegetables for a community who are taking vegetables for some kind of religious practices and so on, or rather spiritual practices. When we tried to do that, I discovered that in the whole of Bangalore, you cannot get 25 kilograms of guaranteed organic vegetable. And there was some research done on that. Because there is more organic food grain, there is a lot of fake organic food available, because the consumer has no way of testing that what he has paid for is organic. And because there is more demand than supply, because of this awareness, the prices of organic grains and vegetables, consumer has no knowledge of the science. There are no instruments easily available to test whether something is organic or not. This again is of the same genre. Then I would like to share this energy thing. I was again wanting to do, when I built my house some 10, 12 years ago, go for that is alternative energy. Sun is available for free. The whole world is going towards that. And more progressive you are, you should be using this. And people have made business out of that. The government gives subsidies and so on. I got complete alternative wiring done to install solar lighting and solar energy for everything. Then one of my friends told me, look, be careful about this solar thing. Why? What is the problem? For this power production in solar panels are silicon wafers. Mostly it comes from abroad, but in India also they have started making, though the quality has not reached the same level. It's those photovoltaic kind of phenomena that happens. The light energy excites, the atoms or molecules, and it releases electrons, and that is what is harnessed as a, electrical energy. Then what happens is, it's made of silicon. For every electron released, it releases silicon elements also, which is poisonous. That's why the silicon wafers, when you see, look at a solar panel, are encased in tightly sealed glass chambers. The cost of that solar panel is as much because of the quality of the casing that is required to contain that silicon evaporation, apparently. I was scared. You have small child at home. Would you really like to have, everywhere a solar panel and so on? It created only, there are no other literature publicly available. There was a hype about this. It's still going on. Then I happened to meet a person who works for an industry manufacturing and selling these solar panels. I quietly asked him, I have heard about this thing. Is it true? Since you are in the business of actually making and selling this solar panel, are you aware of this? That it is made of silicon wafer and it evaporates silicon, which is poisonous. He said quietly, as a matter of fact, yes, we are aware. Then I asked him, what do you do about it? We don't do anything special about it. We do exactly what everybody is doing, which is try to contain that in that glass casing. But what happens after, it starts emitting silicon? He says that's why the panels have a life. Good quality panels have a life of about 15 years. Then that casing will be full of this poisonous gas, with always a potential for leakage if the casing is not good. I asked him, after that life is over, life of the wafer is over, what do? We have to dispose that. It's as bad as nuclear waste. What is the plan for that in your business? I said, no. Then who will bother about it? He said, some NGO will take care of it. This is the attitude. I am aware of this. It is poisonous, not good for environment, not good for human being, not good for any life form. But there is money to be made. It is alternative. Sun is available for free. Later on, they all know it's going to be as sensitive and dangerous as nuclear waste, but there is no plan to dispose that. He actually said, as a matter of fact, some NGO will take care of it. Today NGOs are labeled for that. Whatever the garbage is produced by society, like, the orphans and abandoned people, harassed people. Sorry, I lost connection. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible, sir.
Okay.
Please go on.
Yeah, I'll quickly, go over a couple of, instances in other domain where we are more directly affected. But since it does not affect our biology, like, the healthcare, the food and energy, we are rather enjoying that, which is buying. Today, more and more buying is happening through media, through mobile, through, web application, the so-called e-commerce and mobile commerce and so on. What was happening earlier was even without technology, there was market research done, consumer segment profiling was happening, and some negotiations were there, and some marketing and advertisement was there. But today, more and more purchasing and selling happening through media, to technology, the e-commerce and so on. Enormous amount of data is being collected about what we buy through various channels. And with everything you buy is out of the choice you get, and what is offered to you as individuals is very personalized. There are automated recommendation engines running. Each individual persona is profiled based on what you keep on buying on various websites, etc. There is nothing new. And then accordingly, they would, launch the marketing campaigns with the film star of, famous of fame in your region, and you would go for that. You as in all the consumers. Today, wherever you are facilitated with to furnitures, to movie tickets, to bus tickets, to train ticket, all the essentials and non-essential thing, the entertainment, even importing anything, the books and so on. And every time what you get presented, what is shown to you is very personalized to you based on your choices. The search you do on the Google is captured, and search you do on the YouTube is captured. Not only the products you buy, the information you look for, the kind of audio video you will look for, everything is personalized to you based on capturing the data of your transactions and analysis of that and so on. Then there was always a shopping experience. That's when the malls came into picture. You would pay mostly for the shopping experience, not for the real value of the goods. Then there are discounts, the bundling and the cross-selling, upselling. These are all the technical terms used. What it means is, for some discount, you will start buying some things which are not really necessary. In recent times, we have seen, in spite of this pandemic and all the restriction, when some silk saree shop in Chennai as well as in Bangalore started selling sarees at discount, there was a huge crowd. It was like Kumbh Mel, or Jagannath Rath Yatra. People were falling over each other just to buy that. There is no evidence that all of them contracted the COVID or any of them died because of that. But certainly there was a mega sale happening. Why? Because of discount. Similarly, bundling. Whenever you go on Amazon or anything, you ask for a book, it will recommend automatically that people who bought this book also bought these other books, or also bought these DVDs and something else. You are very tempted to buy them together because for 30% or 50% more cost, you are going to get two of them, another book. And if people who have bought this have also bought that, that one must also be as good as this, or there is something related. This is how consumerism is encouraged. And if you are just a book lover, you don't mind buying. Well, it's one more book of similar kind. Why don't I buy that? But the same thing is being done for every food article also. When I became aware of this analytic, because I happen to be a professional in doing that, and I've been engaged in industry as well as in academics also in developing these algorithms, etc. When we were doing research in that, it was always for a good cause. It had to serve some national purpose, it should serve some public purpose, etc. But once you invent that and discover and publish, it gets consumed by the industry for these purposes. Then there is this location-based services which have started. Based on the GPS location, they can sense every second out of your mobile phone, you start getting marketing messages. If you happen to be walking or driving around a mall, that mall has the capability to sense. They subscribe to these telecom service providers. They give list of the consumers with this kind of age group and income group. If you are passing by, you would receive a message with a discount offer. Whether you wanted to buy or not, maybe you wanted to buy some other time, you would just walk in and buy that because now there is a discount available. Finally, they have invented a thing called beacon. It's not even visible. In front of every store and every shelf inside a store, there would be a device which would be sensing if you are nearby. If you are hanging around in front of the shop doing window shopping or looking at the articles on the shelf, it would detect you are there. It would send a message. The server would generate a particular offer for you, so that if you had some desire with enormous discounts or some bundling kind of thing. Cross-sell is whatever you have bought, they try to sell, they make an offer on something else which is related, right? You buy bread, in the bill that is printed out, there would be an offer for butter or jam or both. If you buy sugar, there would be an offer for tea. There would be a discount offered on tea bags or coffee and so on. Dynamically, it gets printed either on your bill, or if you become a member with a membership card, it would get added to your bonus, etc. Upsell is if you have bought something, you would like to upgrade that. So if you buy a new thing of a higher grade, it will cost you 50% more. But if you exchange it, it would come for 40% more, 10% discount or 20%. Enormous amount of analytics, data analysis, statistical modeling, predictive modeling goes behind this. This is where a lot of educated brains are engaged in discovering these models and making it operational real time. As we are operating through more and more this, the e-commerce and mobile commerce, we are not only being made to consume more and more, spend more and more, our persona, our habits are captured and made available to everybody on earth who has anything to sell. That selling includes educational programs, entertainment programs, even spiritual programs. All of them buy these data. Then coming to entertainment itself, entertainment industry was always there based on market research, consumer psychology, this, that. But now with digital media, it has crossed all the limits, I would say. Again, anecdotally, there is a couple who are a parent in one of the Krishnamurti schools. They work for one of the media channels. They are program managers, which producers who are responsible for producing the most successful TV programs, which would be reality programs as well as fiction. They analyze the screens or what you call a script, scene by scene, minute by minute. They rate that for its neurochemical content. It's like this content is adrenaline content. So you have 40 minutes allocated for the program, 20 minutes for advertisements. That 40-minute, either it's a serial episode or a reality show, it has to have this much of adrenaline content. They actually name those segments. The content in the reality show or the fictional stories, they name those segments by these chemicals. I don't remember, I'm not good at those things. The chemicals which are associated with certain emotions. So if you can generate that emotions, then the product will sell better. People will be watching more, your TRP will increase, which will directly translate into advertisement revenue. Now this couple, being professionals, that's the way they can see some decent money. It is pretty decent money, I would say. So it is irresistible. But they know how much manipulated it is. Compared to this fiction, in last 10 years, the reality shows became so popular for music, everything, even we get forum, he actually wins the show. People inside that, they say a lot of that is manipulated. They will be picking up people who have this content, emotional content. It's not really based on a lot of true talent and so on. Now this couple are in serious conflict. Since they know it is a manipulated content, even children's reality show, should they allow their own children to watch it or not? It is manipulating. So what they have decided to do, they are actually doing that, is they do not have TV in their home. The parents make a living, a good living, from which the child can afford good schooling, but they do not want their children to watch the outcome, the product of the profession of the parents. This is where I started seeing how far away have we come from our own child. How to want us to come everywhere, whether he's doing agriculture or a garage or all of that. And here we have generations of parents, including myself, I would say, a lot of this analytical thing I had done, I know it would be part of all this e-commerce, m-commerce, which is, sensing, manipulating and selling a lot of this non-essential stuff, corrupting stuff also. I would not tell children of my, family that I have also contributed to this, because you would not know when you are contributing to it. It's just a job for you. Then the last thing I would like to share is politics. Obviously, we should not talk too much about that. It would be at our own risk. Most of the people who all of us who have been informed about the things happening in society and at large in the world through the media, we have heard of this. There was a scandal that broke out. A UK-based analytics company, which was hired by every major political party in the West as well as in the East, to manipulate messages, news feed given through social media, and change your sentiments and opinion in favor of the party who wanted to come to power. They have succeeded in every one of these elections. All political parties took advantage of that. It broke out as a scandal a couple of years ago. Need not go into the details of it. And finally, in the last mile, even in India, even in small town and villages, after the public campaign ends, they go to door-to-door campaign. There is a technology that is used behind that, which I didn't know till a couple of years ago. There are some spiritual organizations which are helping with that. Spiritual organizations having IT companies are helping such campaigns. It's called Call Blast Analytics. What is done is the contact mobile or the phone number, list of phone numbers are fed to a computer. And dial the number, and as soon as the person picks up the phone, it would start playing these recorded messages. But that's not the end of it. As a consumer, as a receiver, I have a choice of hanging up. But what that computer, after how many rings did I pick up the phone? Did I pick up the phone or not? After picking up the phone, for how long did I listen to the message or not? This is used along with the other information they have from what is my orientation. Is my orientation for candidate A or B or C, party A or B or C? Accordingly, I would be scored in the middle of night. Accordingly, they would choose which door to knock, whom to convert, who is a confirmed voter for them, so you don't have to pursue him. Who is a confirmed non-voter, you don't have to waste time on that. The in-between, all that they're looking for is the last minute 1%, 2%, 3% swing. Analytics, data analytics, profiling is used to that extent in India, in our small towns. This is a fact. Having seen these things, the last one I was even perplexed is the Zoom call we are using currently. When you try to use this Zoom through the web browser, you are asked a question. Please confirm that you are not a robot. I hope all of you have experienced it at least sometime. I experience it every time when I try to log in for the first time through a Zoom, a browser, through the Google browser. Ask a question. Confirm that you are not a robot, for which you have to read some jumbled up number and type it yourself. The funny thing is, who is asking that question and who is confirming that I am not a robot is a robot. It is a reality. This is where all this is headed. The computers acting like human beings, testing the human beings, tracking the human beings, servicing our desires and vanities, and it is automated, and that's what we are calling today as artificial intelligence. What is behind that is machine learning. Lot of this data we talked about that comes through our transaction is captured there, and that is analyzed. These predictive models are made using mathematical models which are developed to mimic human intelligence. That's where this is headed, and which is a fact. And today, every time we log in to have this kind of a conversation, I have to prove that I am a human being to a robot, and the robot will confirm. Once the robot is convinced that I am a human being, it will allow me to enter this Zoom. So this whole thing of capturing data, measurement, analysis, where did it all start? I just yesterday happened to watch the entire talk given by Professor Krishna on this consciousness, where he touched upon a lot of these things, including how mathematics is language of God. This is one of the expressions in that, the literature about the philosophy of science and technology. I'm also familiar with that literature, particularly mentioned Roger Penrose. His celebrated book, which explains a lot of this and, builds up a convincing argument about why there is enough reason to believe that whole nature, everything in nature follows certain order, which can be seen as a mathematical order and can be translated into an ordered mathematical expression. And the whole search of research, the scientific research community, is to find out that equation. That's what has been happening. They started finding out equation behind physics. Out of that came a lot of machinery, leading to all kind of comforts. The automobile or a mobile phone or the communication system. Of course, medicine. It's based on a lot of statistical analysis of things. The data, the measurement, analysis seem to be natural progression of the scientific mind trying to understand nature. And whatever is understood, it has to be validated. Therefore, you need mathematics, you need data to verify. Then finally, you discover an equation, you publish that, so that more people, whoever can understand, who is in the same community, can validate that. And when it gets validated, then what? It has to be useful. The scientific mind is happy, satisfied by discovering something which is there in nature, understanding that and making an equation of that. But this whole research, the livelihood of these researchers have to be facilitated. It has to be funded. The fund has to come from some source. It used to be government, from tax, more privatized. And the agency which is funding, including government, has to get return on its investment. That is where this discoveries, understanding of the nature in the form of discoveries, finally fitted into mathematical equation, had to become useful. Literally, what we spoke about, the businesses being run, the business of politics, business of selling, business of driven by data analysis and artificial intelligence. The origin of all of that is in academic research done by scientists and mathematicians, commercialized for commercial gains of the institutions and the funders. It is a norm now. If you are academic, if you cannot earn money for sustaining your own lab, you would be nowhere. I can recall one particular incident when the great Russia was brought down by the Star Wars launched by the great Western superpower. There are these two superpowers. For instance, they had built the world-class nuclear scientist community. When this whole economy collapsed, there were no funds available to even to pay the salaries of the scientists. They are, great scientists, as good as anybody on earth. They were the best in their breed. The head of their nuclear research institute, or one such institute, actually committed suicide, leaving a note behind that he took moral responsibility for not being able to sustain the livelihood of his scientists. Then what happens? A lot of those scientists were picked up by the Middle East governments, rather whoever, the interested parties who had a vested interest in creating nuclear armament. They needed those scientists. And here were the excellent brains available for money because they could not sustain. And you will start seeing this more and more with the so-called IT revolution. So what is this heading to is, we know it already. We have understood what is machine learning and AI today. What started as for scientific research, collect the data, analyze, make mathematical model, has gotten into the industry driving every kind of business. We are already driven by the recommendation engine and artificial intelligence systems, which are making things available to us at our fingertips. On what basis? By capturing our own persona, our own habits through the transactions we make with all kind of businesses. Parallel to this thing, we have seen in my own lifetime, when I was doing schooling, when I started 50 years ago, none of this was there. We were happy-go-lucky. There was not so much pressure on, becoming a scientist or a technologist. But by the time I reached 10th standard, your life won't be good. So you were sent to science. If you had some natural intelligence of understanding maths and science, you're automatically in the science category. I got into science. This became a movement in early 80s, it started, and everybody knows all the implications of that, what it did to the science streams, the basic science and humanities stream. Then in the 90s, it was this humongous demand for computer. Every governance process, every walk of life, like healthcare needed, healthcare, energy, retail, selling, buying needed, and banking, of course, required computer programs. Part of national research programs. In 80s, on the eve of 50th independence of India, I remember hearing and seeing people like Professor Abdul Kalam, Professor Mashelkar, who was heading this CSIR laboratories, which is a national laboratory which gives scholarship, etc., literally crying in public. This whole phenomena of so much demand for programmers and technologists had taken away best of their scientists because of their ability to read, write, and do research and discover. And because of our own bureaucracy and whatever else, which stops a lot of natural progression which is otherwise possible. They were literally in tears. IITs and IIM or the premier institutions also suffered, but I have also seen more and more people coming into technology institutions only to get a certification and get job in these things. What is the fact of that is, because of this, in our lifetime, what has happened? Increasing push towards science, maths, and technology education. This whole community, generations are called STEM generation, STEM. STEM meaning STEM without roots, and STEM literally stands for science, technology. I believe it is English and mathematics. You have to have English as a communication medium to go and work for this global industry. With that increasing push for that, engineering or technology institutes started mushrooming, which reached a level of nearly 4,500 institutions across India, which were much more than the number of districts we have. Many 12 to 8, about 20 lakh graduates coming out. What happened is, by that time, when this momentum had gathered, we were producing that number of graduates. The momentum of this technology industry had started coming down. People didn't know why. 10 years ago, they started calling 80% of the graduates unemployable. Next year, it became 85%. Next year, 90. Next year, 95%. About 8-9 years ago, it became 95% of the Indian graduates called as unemployable. What is the implication of that? Around that time, my daughter was entered 10th in Valley School. I took a break from my career and started looking into this. I started receiving such graduates coming from small towns, starting from my hometown. They are graduates with first-class engineering degree, not being able to get a job. I started facilitating some kind of training for them. Then when I started looking for what is happening in the world, this is what was happening. NIMHANS had done research across the country in all the metros, and the published research every year showed that 80% of these graduates who could not get employed are depressed. They are getting into addiction, aggression, and towards suicidal tendencies. What I started facilitating as a relearning center or learning center for such graduates, in that I have seen every one of these cases: addictive, aggressive, abusive, all of these. Today, where it has reached is, in last 5 years, this is the statistics which I had seen 5 years ago, which is obviously increasing now. Since 5 years, on an average, a student is committing suicide every hour in India. A student. When I was in this Institute of Higher Studies, I had seen students committing suicide, the masters and PhDs. Most students in the research program were committing suicide. Definitely more were depressed, and some were pushed across the edge. Finally, I saw even a faculty committing suicide. I was totally perplexed. What is going on? Then I realized, even towards the end of my career there, I quit quite early. Even I was depressed. I did not understand why. But that triggered my inquiry. What are these institutions for? What is their motto versus what is actually happening? It occurred to me that the schooling I did up to 12th, the motto of that, the byline of that, the school was one taken from Bhagavad Gita. Panditaha Samadarshinaha. The wise one would look everything with equanimity. I believe that's roughly what it translates to. But my experience was not so. The rank student is looked upon differently from the rest of the class. Front bencher is treated differently from the back benchers, and so on and so forth. Pandita Samadarshina still stands, the motto of that same whole, bunch of institutions. And this National Institute, where I, spent 10 years doing my master's, PhD, I was a faculty also. Their motto, their byline was also from Bhagavad Gita. That was Yoga Karmasu Kaushala. Developing skill in your professional work or the work you are required to do is yoga, with all your attention and so on. I was probably one of those, not pursuing, the commercial goals of going to certain company or etc. because I went there as a teacher, sponsored from an academic institution. I was just interested in learning. I did get some breakthroughs there, etc., which is a different story. But at the end of that, I was unable to understand if education is to enable life, better life, why are there more instances of depression and suicide with higher education? Apparently, this turned out to be phenomena all around the world. That was perplexing. So I moved out of that. For my daughter, I found this alternative education. There are not many options available in India. One is Krishnamurti schools, another is, the Pondicherry. I got into this Valley School basically because it's day scholars and so on. As I mentioned earlier, I got more seriously engaged with the studies and, studying self-study, I would say, in the light of Krishnamurti's teaching, only when I took complete break for my career and I started going to study center, interacting with people and, going deeper into that. And I was asked, since I knew better English as well as I was into academics and so on, I was asked to help with some outbound programs we were doing in Kannada, going to small town schools called Learning and Sharing. Dr. Inamdar was the motivator. He asked me to, do that. Initially, I was scared. I thought I didn't know enough about Krishnamurti to go and talk about it. He said, it's not about Krishnamurti, about right education. For that purpose, to play that role, when I started reading it more seriously, the education and significance of life, a lot of my questions with which I had left these institutions started getting answered. What is fundamentally wrong with our education system? And it seemed like the situation that students will go through, leading to depression and the worst thing is almost inevitable the way the education is administered. It is fragmented by default, vertically and horizontally. Every hour bell rings, a new teacher comes, tells whatever he can. There is no time given for learning. You have to go to the next class, which is entirely based on the measurements, reward, punishment. And then since I got into seriously looking into what is this about, there are formal studies of, from psychology and psychiatry institutes, which say reward and punishment breed greed and fear. Reward breeds greed, greed, and fear, and punishment breeds fear. And what we see today, as well as the phenomena of depression and suicide, is entirely driven by that. The failures are driven, will be driving fear. The fear they carry throughout their life will be driving all other behavior of following the authority. To be safe, you will start consuming whatever comes to you through authoritative and certified sources. And if you succeed, you are driven by greed. You get rewarded. It is the greed that is driving the other end of the business. Use every science, maths, and technology available to maximize profits. Your objective is not to educate the consumer, not to educate the person for whom these services are meant. It is to exploit that understanding of the human need, the fears, for business purposes. It became rather clearer and clearer. When I started inquiring into that, okay, 95% people do not get job. What happens to that other 5%? Are they changing the world for the better? No. It is that successful one which are driven by this greed, ambition, and so on. And most often, like myself, when I worked in the industry, we don't know. This is what I am trained for, educated for, and here is the opportunity. All that I am doing is doing my job to fulfill my duties, my roles and responsibilities, and I get paid for that. And that money is required to make a living, with certain decent, environment and so on. Since I worked in industry at a leadership role, that is learning and development, some of the research done there showed that only 5% of people in any organization, now we are talking of the top, 5 to 20% lucky ones who get employed. What do they do there? How do they perform? The research from the corporate side shows that, corporate human resources shows that only 5% of employees are actively engaged with the vision, mission, and objective of any organization, public, private, small, big, which is a fact. Next 10 to 15%, maybe they have to work with these top 5% directly, they have to work. 80% of employees in any organizations are actively disconnected from the vision, mission, objective.
Is there any problem with the voice? We are not able to listen you, sir.
Yeah, now?
Now I am able to listen.
Yeah,
please go on.
So, how much time do I have? I think we already spent more than an hour. So, okay. So, the ones who are rewarded in their jobs, particularly these technology jobs, I started seeing, because I worked in those technology companies, occupational hazards, because they have to sit more and more. Few who can understand this maths and science and do the programming to create all these automated systems, the softwares and the intelligence systems, get enormously rewarded. And for those rewards, they have to work. And it comes with a lot of occupational hazards. Sitting in one place without sunlight for long hours. Spondylosis, cervical spondylosis, deep vein thrombosis, vitamin D deficiency, obesity, are all very common occupational physical hazards. And psychologically, a wife of a friend of me in California is actually doing research on stress, anxiety, and depression in Indian IT workers. Because we are disconnected from, I could see that it is a disconnection from reality, having to work for something unknown with a lot of uncertainty and fear. You have to keep on working more and more, and the greed kicks in. It becomes a kind of self-fulfilling. You have to do more for the sake of this and that, and which has all these occupational hazard, both physical and psychological. And that's what we keep hearing when you talk about the social implications of that. Economically, while a cross-section of society is becoming better and better, the digital divide and where is all that products of digitalization is going is making people depend more and more on technology. Very few people getting into those streams, getting enormously rewarded, which also comes with a lot of these ailments, whereas the majority being left out of that are also rendered jobless, etc., etc. While inquiring through what is the root causes of this or what is the pattern, it occurred to me that this whole process of schooling and education seemed to be looking for a few people who are genius, who are productive. What do? You don't know where are those few people. You get all the children of the world into schooling through this reward, punishment, and enormous levels of measurements. Those few who survive would be getting into that stream. And you do not bother about the 80 to 95% who do not fit into that. There's no time for real learning. It is success driven by reward and punishment. The brains are literally left fragmented, dissatisfied, whereas sensationalized towards that reward and excitement of creating these products and services, high technology, intelligence, and so on. Those who are successful in this endeavor have no leisure, no freedom for inquiry, whereas those who are left out, who are failures, they do not have the basic security of living necessary to get into inquiry, which Krishnaji says that the brain has to be basically secure. What I could connect with when I did this outboard program is that suddenly it occurred that this stress, anxiety, and depression leading to suicidal tendencies in higher education is because when you enter the research program is for the first time you are asked to formulate a question, ask a question, whereas throughout your life of qualifying for this highest level of education, you are trained not to ask a question, you are trained to answer questions asked for somebody else. And as we know, this whole schooling and university education depends on past 5 years question paper. Whereas a child with his inquisitiveness, one of these child psychologists and educationists told me that the day children start speaking, they start asking questions just to understand the environment and understanding life. By the age of 4, they would be asking on an average 400 questions per day. And what we do is suppress that questioning, put them onto just rote learning. I could see that that's what, including myself, were, I was probably a little fortunate. A lot of my, colleagues, etc., when they have to formulate a question, formulate a problem for their thesis, that's when the depression kicks in. A lot of them choose to exit in very, undesirable ways. Now, what is happening to this is what it has done to our education. The more and more science, maths, and technology-driven world, the demand for more and more science, maths, technology brains has driven our education towards this. Where it is going today is all our choices are already being this artificial intelligence driven. Our buying, learning, electing jobs through e-commerce, e-learning, and so on. But these intelligence they are talking about is based on very limited data, corrupt data, incomplete information based on historical knowledge, approximate models. Nobody knows what is the accuracy of all their prediction. Our behaviors are getting changed by the choices we make, which is presented by these approximate models from historical data or somebody else's behavioral data, corrupt data, and incomplete information. We are getting more and more disconnected by reality, which is what is, has become magnified through this pandemic. Out of no choice, we are having to, depend on technology. Another statistic I heard from a friend when I was asking about why this, where is this, demand for AI going? Where is this going? There is so much of work happening in this discovering model, mathematical models and AI models for everything. Even if 50% of these AI models have to become real, one of the estimate is this: it would require 120 nuclear reactors, nuclear power plants to power all the servers, data servers and computing facilities required for discovering these mathematical models from enormous amount of data they are collecting. Even if 50% of all the artificial intelligence being talked about has to become reality, so much of data crunching has to be done, it would require 120 nuclear power plants, is a recent estimate given. Another estimate, or rather seeing through, given being talked about by a person who seems to be a visionary and a seer, because he is enormously influenced by, is a practitioner of I just forget the name, that Buddhist meditation way. He has been practicing that for 20 years. He is a professor of humanities in Jerusalem. Yuval Noah Harari. He has been much talked about. He has written path-breaking books in where is this mind going, and the human evolution, the mind evolution, etc. He has rather identified this precisely: the greed, the fear, the ambition, all the vices were already there, were always there since time immemorial. But the kind of knowledge that is there in the research community, discovered by research community about the biochemistry of human life, our emotions, the way our brain works, the psychology, then mathematics, the mathematical modeling of that, the ability to do mathematical model using enormous amount of data through computing facility, sensing, the combination of all this, understanding of biochemistry of our physiology and psychology, computing and mathematical modeling, this combination was not available even 20 years ago, 30 years ago, while the greed, ambition, fear were already there. Today, combination of these science and technology is making it possible to translate or to exploit our fear, greed, and ambition through the deployment of this data analytics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence systems. Where is this leading to is very few who understand this and who can contribute to this will become enormously rewarded as well as powerful, but the majority would be driven to just consume without a choice. And one of the predictions is, therefore, a very large section of population is going to be labeled as useless. Like we have already called 95% of our graduates as unemployable. That kind of percentage of people would be rendered useless, driven to only being consumers or slaves for these organized businesses. This is one of the projections. And the worst implication of that is, it is already happening. We have seen those statistics. It's already happening, like a student committing suicide every hour. In future generation, when they are driven to being useless by the mainstream, suicides are likely to be the largest cause of unnatural death, is one of the projections. The reason is, the choice this kind of society is leaving to youngsters is poverty or corruption. In a lot of these exploration, while I was happy-go-lucky until I graduated and so on, when I came across Krishnamurti, I came across Krishnamurti's teachings. The year he passed away, there was a TV program on that. I was fascinated by that. I started looking into that, or receiving this often in the background of the life experience, which was good otherwise. I would say through this, my own experience and observation, probably today I'm seeing all these phenomena in the background of what we have understood from the teachings, to the extent we have understood even intellectually. Some of the things that connect to a lot of things I've observed or experienced is, Krishnaji has told this about probably 50 years ago. There would be more and more computerization, computer programs written, there would be more automation, more intelligent systems that would be doing your job. What would you do? Is a question he has asked. He has talked about, particularly in our technology universities and institutions, he has talked about why are we being educated? To serve what purpose? Then he has said, going forward, humanity would be struggling with two major problems, rather, he says, or two major issues. One is it would be more and more analytical. Another one, he says, Marxism. I do not understand the second part, but the first part, I have lived through that. I have been sucked into that. I see that manifesting today more than ever. Everything we do is driven by data and analytics. This he had said 50 years ago. But one thing that struck is, he says, we are not saying it is bad, it is inevitable. I see the inevitability of that for so many reasons we talked about, but that is a challenge. Something deep inside says that, is it really inevitable? What is the choice we have? He has also talked about, of course, right education. Particularly touching is his dialogue with young students in one of these schools. He tells the student, probably is the only founder of any school on earth who tells the students of his own school that it does not matter if you die for a cause, die for your passion, die poor, who cares? He is probably the only founder of any school who tells his own students that I wish you fail in board exams. He is probably the only founder of school who asked his own principal, are you fooling me, sir? And the principal says, yes, sir, there are exams only for senior students. I believe he's telling something very deep about the system, and we are seeing the implications of that. When he said it is inevitable, I'm still wondering, what exactly does it mean? If it is inevitable, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to live? Is it inevitable to live by contributing to that and making living out of that, because that's going to be all pervading, invasive? Or is there another way? He has given some deep insights, particularly about what is right education. Can the learning be insights driven? Can self-awareness be the primary purpose of a schooling or education? Can it be based on relationship between teachers and students primarily, where both are involved in inquiring together? And he has talked about the sacred, which is beyond good and bad. All the little good things that are coming out of science, maths, and technology is what we are fascinated with, but there are a lot of other things. We might be trying to fix that with various other activities, and there are many ways. We will be trying to fix that, trying to correct it, like, the fallouts of this, these industries who know about it say that some NGO will take care of it. If we cannot participate in this, then we could become part of NGOs or create our own NGOs to fight this or to make corrections to that. But is that the only choice we have? Like I was telling, I had this opportunity to facilitate the youngsters who come from that bottom of the pyramid, who are rejected by, and they are called unemployable, rejected by their own families and society because they are unemployable, they are ashamed, they had nowhere to go. My own learnings of through participating in the study center and self explorations started manifesting. It could not have happened in an intellectually planned way, in a calculated way. It just happened. All that I had to do, I was seriously worried about how do I make these people learn, because their brains have literally been degenerated through the wrong way of education. All I had to do was relax all the norms that defines a regular training program, which is having a strict teacher, having a blackboard and whiteboard, having a curriculum, having a time-bound program, having batches for learning, and insisting on English to understand this and that. When I relaxed all that, I did not do it, just so happened. It was not possible otherwise. Each individual has his own rhythm, his own way of understanding things. Learning cannot be batch-wise. Allow each individual to understand and discover the knowledge on his own. Just facilitate that. This way, it started with one person and then it became 3, 4, 5. Then I could send them to industry. The person, the industrialist who got benefited, donated some computers. I put them in an NGO which facilitated this learning center. They owned it rather. It's an orphanage. More and more such students, only through personal references of people who got benefited from this, started coming in. It became a phenomena. All of them over a period of time got exposed to Krishnaji's teachings. They started participating in study center activities, in the retreats, study retreats. They started even volunteering. I have seen what Krishnaji says, what could happen in such a environment of inquiring together with freedom, without fear, that flowering in goodness and awakening of intelligence. A lot of people who are depressed and driven to suicide and of course labeled as unemployable discovered that they have some talent in them, they could learn. All of them have become productive, gainfully employed. They have contributed enormously to industry. Today they are all in these MNCs and it became a phenomenon. But then I realized and I also got into that and some startup involved me as a partner. In 2 years time, I could engage this, such graduates and even dropouts. 100 of them were onboarded into this industry. They've created intellectual properties and so on. That is about the success, the manifestation of this possibility of regeneration of the brain, I would not say mind, towards gainful employment. That shows the possibility of that. But more important one, more touching out of that was the goodness they carry. Because of the positions they came from and what got facilitated, their experience out of that started manifesting automatically. They would invite their friends and youngsters. They would start mentoring them. And it was a seamless arrangement between this learning center and the company. People who studied this call this as what comes closest to the ideal in education and training, and so on. And then when the system became greedy about wanting more and more of this, there were distresses created. I got out of that. It is slowed down. I'm wondering, this is probably, that's when I came across Krishnaji's The Most Sacred, which is beyond the traditional good and bad, the fields of good and bad, as against good as against the traditional bad. And he talks of a third thing which is untouched and untouchable by thought. So with all our imagination and energy, we could be trying to fix some problems, right? The unemployable could be made employable through a compassionate engagement. But if it is going to serve the same purpose of industry or businesses which are driven by the other, then is it the right thing to do? Is it completely the right thing to do? Is a question I'm living with. So with these understandings and in the background of Krishnaji's teachings, the question I have is, in this world which is becoming increasingly driven by measurements, analysis, and invasive administration of these solutions that is coming from analysis in the name of order, that is external order, that is organizing the businesses for common good, how do we cultivate, sustain, and live by a mind without measure? Krishnaji talks so much about, the mind without measure, where learning can happen by direct perception, which I have seen in people who came from completely science and technology background. Through their own observation, they could find alternative and more natural way of treating ailments, both physical and psychological. But in a world increasingly driven by measurement, analysis, and invasive administration of the solutions driven by technology, how do we sustain and live by a mind without measure? Is the question I would leave open. Thank you. Sir, I am unable to hear you.
Sir, I am Dinesh Wagbare. I want to do some dialogue with you.
Sure.
Whatever you said is 100% correct. But don't you think that this is also a very good business opportunity for us, like you, I, and such people who can have such 80% or 90% people whom we can drive to a right direction, whatever the Krishnaji has suggested.
Yeah, I see that as an opportunity. I won't call it as a business opportunity. It is certainly a great opportunity to put into practice all our understandings of, living,
Yes.
learning through perception, living closer to nature.
Yeah, because that whatever the third factor you said, which is beyond right and wrong,
Yeah.
that factor itself is self adjusting itself, and that intelligence which he indicated, that is already will come into the picture in such cases, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
What do you think?
Yes,
This is inevitable because this all things,
Yeah.
comparison, and this is a part of the life. And I'm also working with one of the corporate, and what I find that okay, the things are not is going in the wrong direction, but at the same time there are corrections available to this.
Yeah.
By the self-education and this thing, it is possible to revert all these things. What do you say?
You see, again, the corrections are always possible. But if you are going to correct a system which is moving with this enormous momentum of every aspect of life driven by measurement and manipulation, is that the right thing to do? It's like, some a poor fellow in Bihar, he took it as a challenge. Every year he is training 30 extremely poor fellows to crack JEE IIT, that super 30, right? But after cracking that, having been facilitated, he has been under tremendous pressure from the mainstream institutions and the training business. His life was in threat. But what do they do after that?
But
Right?
despite of your all these problems, 80% people are available to you, which are useless from the standpoint of view of the corporates. So those people, momentum is with you, not with them.
No. I know. So it is a much deeper problem. Like when that became a phenomena, I onboarded 100 children like this. I was responsible for all the 100. Can you imagine what happens to me? I started acquiring some ailments which I was never having ever. Because of sleeplessness, I wanted to make it a success, right? I was taking care of instructing them, training them, making them work, then communicating to the client.
So this immediately indicates that more Rajaraman should be there to correct the system.
That is why I'm exploring. It is not scalable easily. It has to come out of inquiry without self-interest. I can tell you, even for psychological ailments, what is so-called normal is not normal. Again, this science-driven, I would say the healthcare, where it has taken to is, they refer a thing called statistical manual. There are disorders which are classified. A child is supposed to cry only so much per day. If it cries 10% more than that, it is disorder number 1, 2, 3, 4. If it cries 10% less than that norm, it is disorder number 1, 2, 3, 5. And there is commercial interest of pharmaceutical companies in that. You know where it is leading to? Today, in rural India, children going to school, when they reach 10th standard, there is mass they are inflicted by migraine. I have worked with healthcare, mental healthcare, professionals working in rural areas. I remember in my schooling time, 7th standard was a district public exam, district level public exam. Mine was the last batch actually. When 7th standard was district level public exam, I remember my own friends committing suicide at 7th. Once they removed that, suicide stopped at 7th standard. So if life and then we keep hearing every year when there is a 10th and 12th board exam results are published, so many suicides. The most perplexing cases are somebody was expecting a rank, because of error in tabulation, they did not get the first rank, or they were not on the rank list, they commit suicide.
But
So
this
there is something
inevitable, sir.
much more fundamental than just getting into an IT industry and making a successful living out of that. The issues are much more fundamental and massive. That's where it is. I have not got all the answers obviously. When Krishnaji says, Krishnaji had seen this 50 years ago. Computer is going to be God. Computerization, automation, more intelligent system doing all your job is going to happen. What will you do? He asked the question. Will you meditate? Start meditating. At least then. He has spoken on these lines. And when he says it is inevitable, he says we are not saying whether it is bad, good or bad. We are saying it is inevitable. So with the inevitability of that, how are you going to bring up children? To be first sensitive and to be driven by direct perception. Look at this pandemic, what it has done. It is so obviously much more fear-driven than anything else, right? The whole, pandemic was simulated by a technology company 3 years ago, and it is that technology company which is going to be, the charitable agency, dispensing vaccines. And you see what is the race for getting the vaccine? They have relaxed a lot of norms. It has to go through for animal and human testing. Some tests are skipped, because there is such an urgency. And apart from urgency, you look at the market. And it is going, I did not have absolutely any fear of this virus, but now I have a fear of being compulsorily vaccinated by this mRNA vaccine. And you talk to very good, revered biology and chemistry teachers in the Valley School. I did speak a few days ago. He said it is scary. They know what it can do. If a teacher in a school can know, a serious teacher in a school can know what this mRNA is about, why is public not being educated about it? And now this will sound like being activist, etc. It's not about that. It is about the intelligence. Where is the intelligence? The intelligence which is all coming from this modern education, we see the limit of that. We have reached the limit of that. So today, that's what I was referring to as post-pandemic situation. You did not read through all of that. Today, you are compelled, you are homebound, you are compelled to transact through e-commerce, mobile commerce, and e-learning. You know what chaos is happening. This is from Krishnamurti schools. It is virtually shut down. The best part of Krishnamurti school, I was involved in one of the audits here. The best part of the school was the environment. The physical environment that is there in pristine nature, wilderness, and the relationship between the communities, the teacher community, the parents community, and students, more between teachers and students. If both of them are taken away, it is no more same as what it is intended to be. Even with that environment and a relationship, you had a lot of challenges in keeping with the intent of Krishnamurti. But without that, you see, so if it is becoming so compulsive and the government is going to get into every home and compulsorily vaccinated us, because they'll say, you may be a yogi, you think you are a yogi, you don't need this vaccination, but you are going to live in public. I am taking care of the public interest.
So what solution you are suggesting, sir?
We don't have solutions. It's a point of inquiry, definitely. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
And it is serious. And we have been hearing Krishnamurti for at least I have been hearing more regularly over the last 10 years or so, the impending crisis in human consciousness. But in last 1 year or 9 months, it is here and now. as you are seeing. The way it has affected, the way it has exposed what is essential and non-essential, and how this technology has come into every walk of our life, and you have no choice. And what you think is choice presented to you is based on a lot of these incomplete data, partial data, corrupt data, and this half-baked intelligent solution, so-called intelligence solution. Sovereign government do not seem to have a choice. It is my personal experience. By Krishnamurti, I am willing to die for that. Speaking against that. I know a friend who has cured a lot of these personally known cases without any invasion, without medication. But Prime Minister of a sovereign country like India cannot say it in public that it is a cure because of these international norms and the WTO and so on and so forth. WTO agreements they have signed. He can only say this is the immunity booster. Then what are they waiting for? They're waiting for from these certified, authorities who will distribute these vaccines free, and he will have to distribute them. That is what is the most depressing thing.
Right, sir. हाँ जैन साहब
जी it is already 7:54,
so
we should conclude the meeting. Thanks to Rajaram Kudli ji.
Thank you, sir.
And if Gopalan ji wants to comment something, he can comment.
Sir, not today. I think we have already taken more time today, so we should now digest this. Maybe we can
Okay.
discuss it some other future occasion.
Okay,
I
sir.
think
Okay.
what I suggest that there should be one another day for Mr. Kudli's another this thing, second part of the lecture. And at that time, I think people can ask their questions and they can discuss with him about the situation and all that. What Mr. Sushil Jain has to say?